Hi everyone, so now we are starting with the next chapter on compilers, and that's code optimization. So the techniques which a compiler can employ in an attempt to produce a better object language program than the most obvious for a given source program. So code optimization is mostly involved in what techniques a compiler is using in an attempt to produce a better object language program than the most obvious object language program. Okay, how to make it better. So quality of an object program is generally measured by its size or its running time. If I am able to create a smaller size object code, or if I'm able to make a faster running object code, that means I have optimized it, right? It is important that optimizing a compiler attempt transformations that are likely to improve the code without costing too much at compilation. We should reduce the compilation cost, but we should improve the object code that we are creating. Okay, so what are the different principal sources of optimization which are used? So the tactics consist of detecting the patterns in the program and replacing these patterns by equivalent but more efficient constructs. We should replace these patterns with efficient constructs. These patterns may be local or global, and the replacement strategy may be machine dependent or machine independent. Richest source of optimization is in the efficient utilization of the registers and the instruction set of the machine. So what are the different optimizations that I can do? First is inner loops. Most of the execution time is spent in relatively little of your program. It's 90-10 rule, which states that 90% of the time is spent in 10% of your code. Thus, most heavily traveled parts of your program, the inner loops, are an obvious target for optimization. Typical loop optimization are removal of the loop invariant computations and the elimination of induction variables. Okay, so whatever part of the code which is there in your loop which is not dependent on the loop, we can move them out. And if there are any variables which are moving in correlation, then we can eliminate those induction variables also. Okay, so the language implementation details which are inaccessible to the source programming languages allow a programmer to write a source program that get compiled into reasonably efficient object programs. Okay, so what are the further optimizations that we can do? Identification of common sub expressions and replacement of runtime computations by compile time. Okay, we can identify what are the common sub expressions and replacement of the runtime computations by compile time computations. So computations, that is substitution of the values for the names whose values are constants, can be done at compile time. The next optimization that we can do is algorithm optimizations. We can improve the algorithms. Okay. Now next concept is basic blocks and flow graphs. Now how exactly to implement all these optimizations, we'll learn them now. Okay. So what do we mean by a basic block? Basic block is a sequence of consecutive statements in which flow of control enters at the beginning and leaves at the end without halting or possibility of branching except at the end. So basic block is a sequence of consecutive statements in which flow of control enters at the beginning and leaves at the end without halting or possibility of branching except at the end. Okay. So 3 address statement x is equal to y plus z is set to define x and to use y and z. A name in a basic block is said to be live at a given point if its value is used after that. Okay, a name in a basic block is said to be alive at a given point if its value is used after that point in the program, perhaps in another basic block also. Okay, so now let's understand the algorithm for partitioning into basic blocks. Suppose I have a 3 address code. How do I partition them into set of basic blocks? Let's learn them now. So the input here is a sequence of 3 address statements. Output here is a list of basic blocks with each 3 address statement in exactly one block. So what is the method that we use here? We first determine the set of leaders. We have to first determine the set of leaders which are first statement of basic blocks. Okay. So what are the rules here? The first statement, how do we find out the leaders? Let's learn that. The first statement is the leader. The first statement of your 3 address code is the leader. Second rule says any statement that is the target of conditional or unconditional goto is a leader. Any statement that is a target of conditional or unconditional goto is a leader. Third rule says any statement that immediately follows a goto or unconditional goto statement is also a leader. I repeat, any statement that immediately follows a goto or a conditional goto is a leader. So these are the 3 ways in identifying a leader. Second step in this algorithm says for each leader that you have found out, its basic block consists of the leader and all the statements up to but not including the next leader. I repeat, for each leader that you have computed in point number 1, its basic block consists of the leader and all statements up to but not including the next leader or the end of the program. So this way we identify the basic blocks. Now here is the example that I have shown you of how to identify the basic blocks using the algorithm on the previous slide. Now this is the program for a dot products. Okay, I am converting this into the basic blocks. So first I have to convert them into 3 address statement. So prod I am assigning it to 0, I am assigning to 1. Then this is normal array converting to 3 address code. Multiply 4 into I and A of T1 is T2. Multiply 4 into I and B of T3 is T4. So T2 and T4 are values of A of I and B of I. Then I multiply the values. I multiply T2 with T4, assign it to T5. Then to prod I am adding T5 and putting it into T6. So entire right hand side is T6 now. Assign that T6 to prod. Then you increment I, put it into T7, assign that T7 to I. And since it is a while loop, now check for the condition. If I is less than equal to 20, go to 3 and keep on repeating because it is a loop. So I have converted this program into set of 3 address statements. Now next statement, let's identify a leader. What are the 3 rules to identify a leader? First rule says the first statement is a leader. So first statement of your program is a leader. So I have marked it with L. Second rule says any statement that is target of conditional or unconditional goto is a leader. So here there is a conditional goto. If I is less than 20, I am saying go to 3. So any statement which is target of conditional or unconditional goto is a leader. So 3 becomes my next leader. Okay. Third statement says any statement that immediately follows conditional or unconditional goto is a leader. So what is the statement following conditional or unconditional goto? Statement number 13, which is this. So this is a statement following conditional or unconditional goto. So this is also a leader. Okay. So identified the leaders. Now in point number 2 of the algorithm, let's mark the basic blocks. So what it says, for each leader that I have computed, its basic block consists of the leader and all the statements up to but not including the next leader. So my first basic block starts from this leader up till this point, but not including the next ladder. So this is my first basic block. Second basic block starts here from this ladder up till the next ladder, but not including that next ladder. So this is my B2, this is my B3, which is a statement following this goto. So I have three basic blocks. Clear? So now let's learn what are the different transformations which are available on the basic blocks. Okay, so first is the common sub expression elimination. If you find out common sub expressions, how to eliminate them, let's learn that. So consider the basic block which I have shown here. A is equal to B plus C, B is equal to A minus D, C is equal to B plus C, and D is equal to A minus D. So if you just notice this carefully, the second and fourth statements compute the same expression. The second and fourth statements compute the same expression, and hence this basic block may be transformed into the following. Okay, second and fourth compute the same sub expressions. What is that? What is A? In place of A you substitute B plus C, so it is B plus C minus D. What is A? A is again B plus C, so it is B plus C minus D. Okay, so what am I doing here? So 2 and 4 are same, so whatever is B, I am assigning it to D. So instead of computing this again and again, whatever is B, I am assigning it to D. So I have eliminated common sub expressions. The next is dead code elimination. The next possible transformation on basic blocks which I can do is dead code elimination. So suppose X is dead, that is, it is never subsequently used. At the point where the statement X is equal to Y plus Z appears in the basic block, then this statement may be safely removed without changing the value of the basic block. Okay, so suppose X is dead, that it is never used, then this statement may be safely removed without changing the value of the basic block. The next transformation which is possible is renaming temporary variables. We can always transform a basic block into an equivalent block in which each statement that defines a temporary defines a new temporary. Okay. The next possible transformation is interchanging of statements. Suppose we have a block with two adjacent statements. T1 is equal to B plus C and T2 is equal to X plus Y. We can interchange the two statements without affecting the value of the block if and only if neither X nor Y is T1 and neither B nor C is T2. Only then we can exchange them. The next is algebraic transformations, that is, simplify the expressions or replace expensive operations by a cheaper ones. For example, suppose I have X is equal to X plus 0 can be definitely eliminated because it's one and the same. Similarly, suppose if I have X is equal to X multiplied by 1, that also can be eliminated because the value of X is retained, right? Similarly, suppose there is X is equal to Y raised to 2, that is Y asterisk asterisk 2 meaning Y raised to 2, it can be replaced with X is equal to Y into Y because multiplication is lower cost than exponentiation. Okay. Now let's learn the new concept called flow graphs. Now that we know how to construct the leaders, how to construct the basic blocks, now we'll learn the flow graphs. Flow graphs portray the basic blocks and their successor relationships by a directed graph. So what is a flow graph? Flow graph is a directed graph that portray the basic blocks and their successor relationships. For flow graphs, the nodes are the basic blocks. Block whose leader is the first statement is the initial node. So over here, B1 is a block whose leader is the first statement of the program. So B1 is my initial node. Block whose leader is the first statement is the initial node that we have learned, right? There is directed edge from block B1 to block B2 if B2 could immediately follow B1 during the execution. I repeat, there is a directed edge from block B1 to B2 if B2 could immediately follow B1 during execution if there is a conditional or unconditional jump from last statement of B1 to first statement of B2. If there is conditional or unconditional jump from last statement of B1 to first statement of B2. If you've seen here, this is a conditional jump. So from last statement of this block, I am going to first statement. So there is a directed edge. And second directed edge can be there if B2 is immediately following B1 in the order of the program. Now here B2 is immediately following B1, so there is a arc here. Okay. So here we say B1 is a predecessor of B2. Okay. So I have converted my previous this basic blocks into a flow graph by putting edges. Okay. So now I'll explain to you all the code optimization using an example. Okay. So this is the same program which I had taken. So first we identify a leader. First statement is a leader. Target of conditional or unconditional go to is a leader. Statement following conditional or unconditional go to is a leader. So I have identified leaders. I have identified the blocks. Then let's mark the flow graph. So since this is the first statement of the program, this is my initial node. This is the second node. And this node is immediately following this in the program execution. So mark a arc here, go to 3. So mark a arc here. After this, if whenever the loop completes, it will come out. So flow graph is done. Okay. Now let's learn what code motions that I am doing here to transform this into optimized code. Okay. So loop is a collection of the nodes that is strongly connected. That is, from any node in the loop to any other, there is a path of length 1 or more only within the loop. Okay. So what is the code motion that I can do here? We take a computation that yields the same result independent of the number of times we go through the loop and place it before the loop. That means whatever code which is there in the loop, which is not dependent on the iterations of the loop, we move them outside the loop. And this is called code motion. So in the above example, suppose if you focus on a statement T2 is equal to address of A minus 4. Now this address of A will remain same, 4 will remain same. So number of times I come inside the loop, this will never change, so I can move this out. Similarly, address of B minus 4 is a loop invariant statement. It's not going to change as we iterate through the loop. So T2 and T4, these statements I can move outside the loop using code motion. So those are loop invariant variables. Agreed? Now I get a flow graph of the code motion. What did I say? T2 and T4, move them outside the loop. So I moved them outside T2 and T4. So this is a B1, this is B2, and this is a B3 now. So I have just moved loop invariant variables outside. Okay. Next is, this is the flow graph of the code motion. Now let's see if there are any induction variables. Induction variables are the variables which move in a lockstep fashion. Okay. So value of both I and T1, remain in lockstep. That is, whenever I increment by 1, T1 increments by 4. Okay. So both I and T1 form a arithmetic progression. We call such identifiers an induction variables. Okay. So this I and T1 is an induction variable. So I can change this code as follows. So whenever I increments by 1, T1 increments by 4. So instead of using I can use T1. With that, one variable I will be removed. Correct? That's why instead of this statement, what did I do? T1 is equal to T1 plus 4 I have made. So I'm completely eliminating I now. T3 is T2 of T1. T5 is T4 of T1. Now T6 is T3 into T5. Prod is prod plus T6. Now I am removing. So remove this statement. And here the comparison of I can convert them into T1. Because whenever I increments by 1, T1 increments by 4. So T1 is less than equal to 76. Then go to B2. So any statements related to I have removed and I have replaced those logic with T1. So I am initializing T1 to 0. So this is called elimination of induction variables. Third is reduction in strength. Check whether we can reduce by strength. Replacement of an expensive operation by a cheaper one. For example, T1 is equal to 4 into I is replaced by T1 is equal to T1 plus 4. Multiplication is costly than addition. That's why I'm also use reduction in strength concept here. Okay. So with that, we have seen how using flow graphs how we have optimized the code. Now we'll learn the next concept called directed acyclic graph. So directed acyclic graph is used for automatically analyzing the basic blocks in a directed acyclic graph. Directed graph with no cycles, which gives picture of how the value is computed by each statement in the basic block and is used in subsequent statements in the block. So directed graph, I repeat, with no cycles gives clear picture of how the value computed by each statement in the basic block is used in subsequent statements in the block. Okay. Constructing a DAG or a directed acyclic graph from the 3-address code is a good way of determining the common sub-expressions within a block. It also helps in determining which names are used inside the block but evaluated outside the block. And it also helps in determining which statements of the block could have their values used outside the block. So all these optimization figures, it will help us if we draw a directed acyclic graph. So what is the algorithm for constructing a DAG? What is the input to this? A basic block. So all the basic blocks are input to a DAG. What is the output? Output is a DAG that we construct with following information. It has a label for each node. For leaves, the label is an identifier. And for interior nodes, it's an operator symbol. Okay. So directed acyclic graph looks like this. I'll first show you all how it looks. This is how the directed acyclic graph looks like. Okay. So I think first we'll construct directed acyclic graph and then we'll go through that particular algorithm that will help us in understanding. Okay. So 4 is multiplied by I and assign it to S1. So 4 is multiplied by I and assign it to S1. So interior node is an operator and leaf nodes are identifiers, right? So 4 multiplied by I, am assigning it to S1. So 4 multiplied by I, assign it to S1. S1 is the label assigned to this node. Then address of A minus 4, assign it to S2. So address of A minus 4, assign it to S2. S2 of S1, assign it to S3. So S2 of S1, assign it to S3. 4 multiplied by I, you assign it to S4. 4 multiplied by I had already done and I had assigned S1 to it. Now also assign S4 to it. Address of B minus 4, you assign it to S5. So address of B minus 4, assign it to S5. S5 of S4, assign it to S6. So S5 of S4, assign it to S6. S3 multiplied by S6, assign it to S7. S3 multiplied by S6, assign it to S7. Prod plus S7, assign it to S8. So prod plus S7, assign it to S8. S8 you assign it to prod. So S8, I am assigning it to prod. I plus 1, you assign it to S9. I plus 1, assign it to S9. Whatever is S9 is same as I. So write I here. If I is less than equal to 20, go to 1. If I is less than or equal to 20, go to 1. Simple. So this is how I construct a directed acyclic graph. Now let's see the algorithm for constructing this. Here we need to maintain the set of all the identifiers for which there is a node associated. Okay, we need to maintain the list of identifiers for which there is a node associated. Okay, the node could be either a leaf, so this node could be either a leaf labeled by that particular identifier, or it could be an interior node with that identifier on its attached identifier list. So the node could either be a leaf node which is labeled by that particular identifier, or it could be an interior node with that identifier on its attached identifier list. We assume the existence of function node, which as we build the DAG returns the most recently created node associated with that identifier. So node is a function that we have which will return to us the most recently created node associated with that particular identifier. Okay, so initially we assume that there are no nodes in a DAG, and node function is undefined for all the arguments. Suppose the current 3 address statement is A is equal to B of C. Suppose the current 3 address statement is either A is equal to B operation C, or A is equal to operation B, or A is equal to B direct. We treat a relational operator like if I is less than equal to 20 go to as case 1 where A is undefined. Okay. If node of B is undefined, meaning if a node function for B is undefined, that means the node is not at there, right? So we create a leaf and label that as B, and let node of B be that particular node. Okay, so in case 1, node C is undefined, hence you create a leaf and label it with C, and then let that leaf be node of C. So in case 1, determine if there is a node label op whose left child is node B and whose right child is node C. So if a node is not available, create a leaf node and assign that label. Okay, so now if we want to evaluate this case 1, check if there is a node B already. Check if there is a node op whose left child is node B and whose right child is node C. If not, create such a node. In either event, let n be the node found or created. Okay. In case 2, determine whether there is a node label operator whose alone child is node B. If not, create such a node and let n be the new node found or created. And in case 3, let n be the node B. Okay. So in point number 3 of the algorithm, we append A to this list of attached identifiers for the node n which is found in 2. So in statement 2, we have found a node or we have created a node, right? So append to that list of identifiers for that node as A, because A is going to represent this statement, right? So append A to the list of attached identifiers for the node n found in 2 and delete A from the list of attached identifiers from node A, because we are always tracking the latest node which is generated by that identifier. Finally, set the node of A to that n that we have just created or found. Okay. Now let's learn what are peephole optimization. It's a method for trying to improve the performance of the target program by examining a short sequence of target instructions called peephole and replacing these instructions by shorter or faster sequence whenever possible. I repeat, peephole optimization is a method for trying to improve the performance of the target program by examining a short sequence of target instructions called a peephole and replacing these instructions by a shorter or faster sequence whenever possible. So peephole is a small moving window on the target program. It is the characteristics of peephole optimization that each improvement may spawn opportunities for additional improvements. Okay, so each improvement will spawn the capabilities for extra improvements. So the characteristics of peephole optimizations are redundant instruction elimination, flow of control optimization, algebraic simplification, and use of machine idioms. Okay. So redundant loads and stores can be eliminated. Unreachable code also can be eliminated. So I have an example here. So what it says, if debug is equal to 1, I am going to L1. Otherwise go to L2. How am I optimizing this? If debug is equal to 1, I am going to L1 and where I am printing this information, right? Otherwise go to L2. So I have optimized it this way. If debug is not equal to 1, only then you go to L2. Otherwise you just print this statement. If debug is not equal to 1, then only go to L2. So you can see I have optimized it, control flow. If 0 is not equal to 1, go to L2. Otherwise print this, because there is assumption made here that debug is 0. That's why I am substituting this constant by a concept called constant folding. So if 0 is not equal to 1, then go to L2, else you print this statement. Now let's see how to generate the code from a DAG. So now let's see how the code generation can happen using a DAG. Okay. So this is a 3 address code. This is a DAG that is constructed. A plus B, assign it to T1. C plus D, assign C plus D and mark this T2 here. E minus T2. So E minus T2, assign T3 there. And T1 minus T3, assign T4 there. So this is a DAG constructed from this. And from this DAG, I am having a machine code. Move A into register, add B to that register. Okay, so R0 contains A plus B now. Move C into register R1, add D to that register. So R1 contains C plus D. Move R0, which contains A plus B, move that into T1. Move that into T1. Move E into R0 now, because the intermediate result of A plus B, which was in R0, I have moved it to T1. So now I can use R0 for my operations. I am moving E to R0. I am subtracting E with what? R1. What is R1? R1 contains C plus D. So I am subtracting R1 with R0, because R0 contains E now. Move whatever is in R1. Move T1 now. So I am subtracting R1 and R0. So it's the result of this subtract. Now I am moving whatever is T1, which is A plus B. This T1 I am moving it into R1. And subtracting R0 and R1, which will give me this answer. And I am moving that R1 into T4. That's it. So using registers, I am using. Now if I rearrange the order of 3 address code, I am getting a smaller object program. What did I do here? C plus D I am moving on top. E minus T2 I am moving on top. A plus B I am moving down. And T1 minus T3 I am keeping as it is. I am just reordering these statements. I am getting a smaller object code. So this is how the compiler is optimizing the stuff and getting the lesser size object program. So now let's see how it comes to know how to reorder this. Here I have shown an example wherein suppose I have this 3 address code, I am getting this DAG This is the machine level program. But if I reorder these statements, I'm getting a smaller. But how do I know how to reorder this? What is the best reordering? For that, I have one algorithm here called heuristic ordering of DEGs. Okay. So what this algorithm tells us? So heuristic ordering for DEGs is nothing but a node listing algorithm. Okay. So here, while there are unlisted interior nodes remain, do begin select an unlisted node n, all of whose parents have been listed. I repeat, select an unlisted node n, all of whose parents have been listed. Then you list n. Okay. While the leftmost child of n has no unlisted parents and is not a lift, do list m and m you assign it to n. So now let's understand this with the help of an example. So for this particular example, let's learn. Initially, the only node with no unlisted parent is 1. Correct? Initially, the only node without any unlisted parent is 1. So we set this n equal to 1. I repeat, initially the only node with no unlisted parent is 1. So we set n is equal to 1. Now the left argument of 1, which is 2, has its parent listed. Because according to step 3, I am saying n is equal to 1. So I am listing 1. Right? So now the left argument of 1, which is 2, has its parents listed. So we list 2 and set n is equal to 2. While leftmost child has no unlisted parents and is not a leaf, he is saying list m. So I am listing 2. Okay, and this listing of 2 that I made, make that as n now. So n is 2 now. Okay, now we find the leftmost child of 2, which is 6 and has unlisted parent 5. The leftmost child of 2 is 6, but it is having an unlisted parent 5. So still now only 1 and 2 is listed. Right? So leftmost child of 2 I go, which is 6, but it is having an unlisted 5. Thus we select a new n and a node 3 is selected. It is the only candidate. Right? So we list 3 because it has a listed parent. So we list 3 and then proceed down to its left chain. Listing 4. I go to the left child of it, 4. Both of its parents are listed. So I can list 4. Yes. Now go to its leftmost child, 5. Its parent is listed. So now listing 5. Now go to its left child, 6. Now both of its parents are listed. So now list 6. So what is the order in which I have listed till now? First I listed 1. Then I listed 2. I could not list 6 because 5 was unlisted. So I moved here. I listed 3. I went to its left child, 4. Both of its parents are listed. So I listed 4. Go to its left child. Its parent was listed. So list 5. Go to its left child, 6. Now both of its parents are listed. List 6. This leaves only 8 among the interior nodes. So we list 8. Correct? The only interior nodes we have to list. Now resulting list is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 8. Now this is the resulting list of ordering. Okay. So suggested order of evaluation is opposite of the list that we have found out. I repeat, suggested order of execution is exactly opposite of the list that we have found out. So what is the list that we found out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 8. This was the list we found out. So write the 3 address code in the opposite of what list we found out. So 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exactly opposite of what we found out. Very simple. And this is optimized ordering of 3 address code. So if we generate a machine level program for this, it is definitely going to be optimized. So in my next session on compilers, I'll explain to you all code generation. Thank you.